Hello everyone, welcome to Sonicstate Live 2018, coming here from dBs Bristol. Thank you very much to dBs Bristol for hosting us today. Here with Mr. Ty Unwin. Now, before we get into the music, we're going to just talk a little bit about Ty's career thus far. So, as Ty is frantically getting things working here, we will...
You carry on.
We can
talk.
I was going to get you to talk.
No, Gaz, it's you. You talk.
So Ty's kind of been very successful in the TV scoring industry. Would you think that's the... But more recently has had some success with the latest Midge album, which is revisiting Midge's kind of hits and creating new scores, orchestral scores.
Yeah.
And that's taken you places.
That was good. That was kind of a couple of years' work with Midge, which was really great. I'm used to working alone, and so I spent all of my life sat in a studio by myself. And anyone that knows me and the way I work, the moment they found out I was actually going to work with anybody, thought that this was a really bad idea. And luckily, Midge is one of the nicest guys on earth, and he made it really easy. And it was great. No, it was a good 2 years. So,
wow.
Yeah.
So let's rewind right back to the start then. So you started making music as a teenager?
Yeah, I started learning piano when I was, I don't know, 9, something like that. And I kind of knew fairly early on that I wanted to write to picture because I'd watched things on TV and film, and I loved the idea of writing to picture. And so I knew fairly early on, and then I kind of wrote songs and wrote orchestral pieces from early teens, basically.
Wow. And you appeared on a TV program, didn't you, in the 1980s, with doing a pop thing, and that proved to be quite pivotal, didn't it?
Oh, the Song for Christmas.
Right.
Yeah. Okay. So there used to be a song competition called the BBC Song for Christmas, and I entered that last minute. There's a theme that's going to run through my life that everything's last minute, and I entered that just as a kind of throwaway thing when I was 16, 17, and fortunately I won that. And because of that, it was that competition that I can kind of centre everything back, career-wise, back to that one moment when I won that, because everything has stemmed from that one. Winning that competition has led to everything else. I met the right people at the right time, with the right opportunities, and so it was good. And the following year, I was a judge, and there was this guy called Gary Barlow, but I don't think he won it, but he was on the following year. And I was judging it, which seems ironic somehow. But what happened to him?
Okay, so you said then you were drawn then towards scoring as opposed to maybe some of the people who might prefer to kind of look to take to the stage. This has led to...
Look at me. What do you think I look like on stage? No, I liked the idea of being able to develop more that, songs. I wrote loads of songs through the years, but as a medium, it always seemed like, the whole short 3.5-minute pop song isn't really me. So I like to kind of just get my teeth into things. And I loved orchestras, and there's not that much opportunity to do that, writing songs. So.
Right. So then... Studio-wise, then,
yeah.
You set up a studio quite early on, and
I just did what everyone else does, which is I just bought gear and called it a studio in my bedroom, and that was essentially it.
Right.
I mean, I can call it a studio. It was me, a bedroom, and gear.
Right.
But the reality was, I made a big thing early on of whatever money I did make, and don't in the early years, my income was, we'll say, limited, i.e. non-existent. But whatever money I did make, I made a big thing of investing into the studio. And there's a kind of movement within, I think maybe less so now, but when I was starting out, there was, if you were going to do TV stuff, there was a movement of most people didn't invest that much into the gear. They were all about, once you got your money, you were living and enjoying yourself. And that kind of just didn't work for me. So whenever I got any money, it would all go back into gear.
I think probably most of the audience are going to relate to that, though.
But the thing is, I always worked on the assumption that at some point it would serve me well.
Right.
Do you know what I mean? And it's you know, I've said this so much. I don't drink, I don't smoke, I don't do, you know, God.
What do you do?
Depressing.
So, okay.
Good. Yeah.
So you were working. Was your sort of setup then always based around MIDI? Then?
Yeah.
So prior to the advent of more powerful computers being able to do hard disk recording and stuff.
Yeah, completely.
You were like a MIDI studio, and then you would what? Master down onto DAT.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, yeah, it was all down onto DAT. I was a big DAT merchant.
Yeah.
I loved that.
You loved that?
Yeah.
Really?
When it works, I love it.
When it works.
Yeah, I haven't tried it for. But so yeah, that was my thing. So it was all MIDI, and don't get me wrong. I mean, as I'm kind of about to prove in a bit, you know, kind of my setup then was compared to what we have now is to say it was limited was putting it mildly. Ironically, though, and I've said this before, the best music I ever wrote was on my most limited setups.
Right. Yeah.
And so I'm the worst person because, you know, kind of maybe people know my obsession buying gear, and I like gear and I have quite a lot of it. I'm also the first to be turning around and going, you don't need any of that.
Right. And I guess what you've brought tonight then is like a super streamlined system. I mean, people may have expected to see the Schmidt.
Well, to be fair to Nick, the first thing Nick did turn around to me and go was, you know, so could you bring the Schmidt? And unfortunately, I suffer a bit of, when it comes to gear, I kind of suffer a bit of OCD. And so from my point of view, you know, my all the gear in my studio is immaculate. You know, you've been there. So all of my studio gear is immaculate. And it's, you know, the thought of taking it out of the studio and moving it.
Yeah.
And there are some things like the Schmidt, it's a big thing, and I don't want it, you know, getting marked. And then things like, because we looked at bringing the Hartman, the Neuron.
Wow.
But I mean, honestly, if you move that, I mean, that's just...
It'll never work again.
Well, that's it, honestly. You kind of put it in place, you say a little prayer, you cross your fingers and hope it'll boot up.
Okay, so you've gone a different way then. You've brought like, what's possibly the smallest setup you could bring?
This is my absolute bare minimum setup. The only thing that's slightly different with this is the fact that because, you know, kind of... I have different templates for whatever the project is going to involve. And for this one, Nick and I thought it'd be good to maybe go the kind of way I write what I'll call orchestral music. Although it's pretend orchestral music. I'm never trying to pretend it's anything other than that. Okay. But the only thing I can't coach, which is a bit of a luxury, is I bought a 61-note keyboard. I've got a variety of different things.
Right.
My most compact setup, I would bring a little 25 note.
Right.
But writing orchestral music with a 25-note keyboard is, for me, is nigh impossible.
So I can see you using Cubase. Have you always been a Cubase user?
No, my main tool is basically Nuendo.
Right.
So, but that means that, you know, kind of the Nuendo license are ridiculously expensive. And anyone that knows anything about Nuendo, that the Nuendo and Cubase are very similar in lots of ways. There's just a lot more post-pro stuff in Nuendo. And that's kind of that's where I live. But when it comes to my little traveling setup, I just use Cubase, which is absolutely fine.
And I see there's this little thing on here. Now I'm a bit gutted because I was gonna do a little video about this thing to try and show people it, thinking that no one had ever seen it, and there you are showing it here.
Well, I can hide it. If I just put it down there, it doesn't exist.
Okay, so this little thing, ostensibly, called a Stream Deck by Elgato, I think, is kind of a bunch of buttons so that you can have custom like GIFs, little images behind there, and you can have...
Is that going on a camera or not? If I hold that, you can.
Yep.
Okay, so this thing here, all this really is just the equivalent of setting up shortcuts on your laptop. And it can work with most of the DAWs, because it is literally just copying keyboard shortcuts. And this literally is just the absolute bare minimum, and then I've got subfolders where if I go into audio, I suddenly, you know, kind of all the little... icons change, and it takes some setting up.
Because you put all the icons in.
Yeah, but once you've set it up, it's set up.
And you configure it exactly to your workflow.
As you want. Because there used to be a Euphonics MC Pro system where all of the buttons had icons that you could change.
Right.
And so I was a big user of that. And then I went to Nuage, where a same, you know, kind of principle. And this was just, it's just a little mini version of those things.
Great. And we got the Apollo Twin, the Universal Audio here.
Simply because I'm a big UAD freak, and to kind of not have those is, you know, I can't imagine it. So.
And Cubase with lots and lots of things loaded in?
Well, it's a template. That's all it is. I mean,
Okay.
and so from a musician's point of view, for me, I know some composers who basically start with a blank template or a blank project, and I don't understand how you can do that. For me, I have different templates based on the kind of project I think we're going to be doing. So depending on, I'll watch the film or the program or whatever, and I will then spend a good few days setting up my template to suit the kind of sounds or ideas.
When you're talking about template, though, you're just literally just getting all the sounds ready for the... Is that what you mean?
Yeah, because for me, it slows down the process. If I'm sitting there going, okay, well, I want to... We're going to... essentially, this is all orchestra, or my version of an orchestra. And so to the fact of you've got an orchestra, and you then sit down going, okay, well, now I might need some pizzicato strings, and then having to load on pizzicato, that just slows me down for me. So for my idea of a template, it's just to have the few basics all set up, ready to go, and you can just, if
do you want to show us your process then?
well, I mean, okay, I can take you through forgetting the musical side of things, I can take through what my basic template is.
Okay.
The first thing I should emphasize is the fact that everyone's template is completely different. So all of this is completely personal to me, and everybody could be looking at this going, oh my God, what fucking idiot, why does he do that? That's absolutely fine. This is the way I do things. I used to be a big VSL man, so I used to have lots of key switching and, going through different articulations. That just annoyed me. So as processing powers got better, now I try to have different articulations as separate tracks, as separate instruments. The other thing that you'll notice is that the way I work in terms of working on a sound, you get lots of people who try to emulate the sound of a real orchestra. And that is so not me.
Okay.
Because, I've had people turning around and saying, but surely you can't use this library with this library because it's recorded in a different hall. No, seriously. You can't have the cellos then, because if you listen to the violas are recorded with a 4-second reverb, and rubbish. Certainly, I don't care about any of that rubbish. For me, does it sound good? We'll go with it. If it sounds crap, we won't go with it. And that's the bottom line. I have to, anyone that knows me, I'm fairly black and white. It's either crap or it's good, and there's no in between. And so for me, everything I do breaks every single rule that is in the book. The other thing about me and the way I work is it's all about layering. So, for example, the reason that I'd like to think that some of the stuff I do sounds quite big. The reason is because rarely when I'm doing like a string, a string section, will I ever use one library or one patch. You'll be amazed how many people will sit there with one string sound and go, okay, here we go, that's fine. Play it, do it, move on. I'm sitting there and I will layer 3-4 libraries on top of one another, all doing individual lines. The main thing I have to emphasize about this setup is the fact that this is literally stripped down. There's very little in terms of precision. And on my bigger system, there's lots and lots of, I'm fortunate to have access to most of the libraries, and I will have one patch from here and one patch from there. A laptop system, this is all contained within the machine. There's no external drive. Everything is broad brushstrokes. In terms of detail, very little. This is all this is all basically a travel rig to knock out something really quickly. And that's the emphasis on this. Really quickly and to do the job.
Okay,
if that makes
think
sense.
we want to see some action.
Well, the first thing I'm going to say is this is my secret patch. Okay. Anyone that's telling you that you need huge libraries and huge amounts of memories to get half decent sound, this is the absolute opposite of that. This was a patch that was on Giga Studio.
Wow.
Back in, and I think I got this patch in 1990 something, and it's the grand total of 15 meg.
Wow.
Which at the time seemed huge. And it went on Gig Studio, then went to Akai Sampler, then went on to Contact. And there's one reason, this is my kind of little trick. This is my string sound. I'm using this very vaguely. So this is my writing string sound. It's not a great sound, but there's one thing about it which differentiates it from every other writing sound. When I put the pedal on, if I play one sound, if I play that, play it gently, with most other libraries or most other samples, if you then keep repeating that chord, all you do is keep triggering the attack. So it just goes, wah, wah, wah. I have no idea why. With this sound, when you keep playing the same chord, there's no expression pedals, there's nothing there. That's me just playing the same chord again and again. So when I'm writing, to get a kind of expression, and you'll kind of see something that keeps coming up the way I write, is the fact that everything's about control, everything's about moving, everything's about swelling. That's my entire thing is all about doing that. And you know, kind of, I get some people who sit there and play a chord and go, we're going to, okay, so it's B flat, okay, F minor. That's it. Now, I couldn't do that, because the way I do it is more of a... And it's going up, and it's rising, and it's moving. Okay. And the main reason the easy way to do that, and you can... I don't know whether the camera's on my fingers when I'm doing this. Is it? Okay. So if you watch the way I play, I'm basically like doing... Pretend, okay, I'll do it with a piano and you'll see. This is actually what I'm doing to get the swelling. To come out, I just bang it a bit harder. So you can imagine at one stage when we were doing early sketches for the mid stuff, and obviously that has to go to a real orchestra and go to a copyist who's basically writing out. What on earth were you doing? Because all that's coming out is this. And he looks at the notes, and I'm there going... But that's my kind of trick sound. And I tell you, almost every project since 1990, years ago, I've started off with that as a kind of writing sound for strings. And every time I've gone, no, I'll get rid of that. You know, kind of that's never going to make it through. This is just to get the patch in. Probably 90%
right.
it always ended up with that in the background doing something. So that's a basic string patch. If I'm doing, okay, now this is called an orchestral short patch. Is that okay? You just want me to, can I just, okay. Orchestral short patch. This is again one on about doing layers. So has anyone got Symphobia? No? Great. So Symphobia is a really basic kind of orchestral library. It doesn't have that much in terms of articulations, but has quite a nice kind of full orchestra patch, which is staccato. Okay? And then there's Spitfire Audio that you'll keep hearing their name quite a lot, because Spitfire they just make great stuff.
Yeah.
So they did a library called Masse. Put them together, which you're never meant to do, different halls, different everything, but it's my kind of, if I'm just going to do a random kind of actiony kind of... Now remember, all of this is basically just doing things... No, don't, honestly. No. God. No, don't clap at that. Honestly, I feel like my daughter that's just turned around and went, look at me! So again, this is all about doing things quickly. And again, you know, it's that thing of, for me, that patch works really well, and you can understand why that's useful. Doing that kind of stuff is really quick because it gets ideas out quickly. But that's as much down to the playing as anything else. Because, you know, if someone came to this as a patch, this is you know, I mean, people get really annoyed with me when I'm in the show that I harp on all the time about you should learn to play. Try not to just treat it as tech. You know, playing is as important as anything else. Because that's a great patch. And yeah, it's nice and it's impressive and gets ideas down. But if I sat here and went, hey, listen to this great patch. It loses something. So all I'd say is, honestly, please try and, my argument was spend as much time learning to play as getting into the tech. A personal thing, but there we go. Then we have again, these are just short. But if you look at this, that's quite a nice short library. But what I've then got is I've got a staccato strings from Albion 1, and then I've got a whole load of solo strings. So this is just like one violin, one viola, one cello. And the reason that's good is it's a more intimate sound. I think this is the thing that sometimes people miss. When you get string patches on synths, when we called synths back in the day, you'd sit there with your Triton or your kind of Phantom or whatever, and you'd have string patches. The difference between solo strings, chamber strings, orchestral strings, they all sound completely different. It's like turning around with synths going, it's a difference between a 1 oscillator synth or a 4 oscillator synth. They all sound different. They all have different things to bring to the party. So my argument is I kind of treat, the reason I have these things layered, I almost treat all of the orchestral libraries like synths. I sit there, I treat each one as an oscillator, and I'm sitting there going, okay, well, the main string library from the Albion is produced in the kind of sustain, and the attack is coming from those from the solo strings. And so they're all, I treat the whole thing like one big synthesizer. Detail, there's not much detail in here. One of them is this. So, that's just a legato violin line. It's detail because it's monophonic. And, again, controller. There's loads of that. Bearing in mind it's on a laptop, it's a half-decent, kind of cello. They're from, if anyone's bothered, by the way, because I always get people turning around and going, where's that library from? That's from Soaring Strings by, is it Musical Sampling? I think they're called. Again, a completely different library, but I don't care. British Drama Toolkit, this is one for intimate moments. This was actually developed by a really good friend of mine called Sam Sim. And the reason this is good is that I love these. This is the equivalent of, like with a synth patch, of having really loads of modulation going on and, kind of things moving all the time. So what they've started to do these days is fantastic, which is you play one note. There's constant movement going on, and each note is different. And you have some that have and it's called British Drama Toolkit because it's basically just instant BBC drama. God, that's really condescending to my own career. This is the thing, you'll kind of learn from it. I'm never trying to pretend that I'm doing anything special whatsoever. Any single person that can play and has the stupidity stroke dedication to invest a lot of time and money into this can do exactly what I'm doing. This is, kind of, there's plenty of people who want to create some kind of mystique about what they do. There is no mystique. Honestly, there is no mystique. You just have to not sleep a lot and spend stupid amounts of money on it.
What was the series you did recently? And you decided not to use orchestral sounds. It was a historic. Was it and you decided to just do it all within.
1066.
Yeah,
that was ages ago. Oh no, yeah, right. Well, that was a couple of years ago. 1066 was good. Well, the reason that was good is that initially they wanted an orchestral score, and I'm just looking at blood and gore and it was great. And I just thought, look, there are two ways of working on this. Well, there are three ways. First of all, because of the amount of time that all these things need to be written in, sometimes you basically have two heads. You have autopilot head, which essentially means, Christ, I have 2 days. And so you literally just do what you know will work. And that's when doing that kind of stuff that I was just showing you, that... Essentially, you can understand, if I really wanted to, I could press record now, watch the scene, and then just go... and you sit there, and you sit there and you can go, you can go through all that, and that's fine. That's absolutely fine. But I don't want to do that. But it is, I can do that, and that's autopilot head. Then I have, kind of, wow, I've got a decent amount of time to write this. Then I go into detail head and try to do something different, like I do with 1066, because I had a long time to write it. And so I tried to do something that was more creative and more like I wanted to do.
What did you use then for that in terms of the palette of sounds?
On the main system, generally there's more than 160 tracks of, but then it goes really stupid. So for example, the orchestral shorts will have, there'll be like 8 different versions. They're all slightly different with slightly different variations. But they're one library that has come out recently that could replace a lot of this, because the thing is about these things is it's constantly evolving. This is my template today. Tomorrow it will change, and if I came back in a year's time, you'd be sitting there going, well, what is there that's still there? And there'll be a handful of sounds like this one. This sound has lived with me for, kind of 20 years. There we go. That's ended up on about 70% of my entire output for the last 20 years. And the main thing, sorry, can I just show you one thing?
Yeah.
Do that with a piano. Coffee, that's another one done. So, anyway.
Okay, so we're going to have to wrap up in
a
minute. So is there any other sounds that you'd like to show us just before we finish?
One good idea, when it comes to things like pianos, just for example, let's take that piano. Don't think you should always just use them as they're meant to be. This is the piano. Fine. But all of these pianos are basically tuned down an octave, which adds... Do you remember the good old days when we actually had samplers, and because you had no memory? I remember I had a TX16W, and you basically you had a whole string section, and when you actually looked into it, all it basically was violins. So all the cellos were basically just violin samples tuned down. But it sounded fantastic. Yeah. So people don't do that now because you can sample every single note. You don't do it. So what I tend to do is do the simple thing of, okay, this is now two pianos detuned, tuned down 2 octaves, but. But it's got a kind of richness that you would never normally get that from normal samples. And don't just do it with pianos, do it with anything. Kind of just take your normal samples in Contact and just tune them down 2 octaves and play 2 octaves higher. It takes a lot of figuring out. You tune it down, you have to play 2 octaves higher. But it changes the timbre, it changes the sound of it. Other than that, honestly, I will just see if this one patch does work before I go, because I know you're going to tell me to shut up in a second. Is this a good time to do it? Because this could crash the whole system.
Let's do it.
Okay?
Yeah.
Fluffy Audio. Does anyone know Fluffy Audio? An Italian sample. They do this choir library that sometimes crashes the system. And it's crashed. Oh, no! Yay! Sorry. Okay, that's very exciting. How exciting is it? I've got a choir sound that works. Listen to this, though, as choir sounds go. Am I the only one stiffy at that? Obviously, I swear, when I first got that library, you could not drag me out of the studio. Do you not think? Okay, I am honestly the only one thinking that's amazing. That's just a sample library. You can change the meter of all of the syllables. You can write your own. You can do key switching. I am the most unreligious person in the world, and yet no one's getting excited with it. Yeah, okay, on that bombshell, wrap it up.
Yeah. Ladies and gentlemen, I'm sure you will be more than welcome. Mr. Ty Unwin.
Brilliant, both.